This administration is profoundly evil in ways that are difficult for Americans to comprehend. We have reached a stage of illegality, immorality, and depravity in a federal administration that no one could have ever thought.
There was a bipartisan immigration bill that was going to try to fix some of this stuff. And Trump didn't want to fix it. He made the House vote against it because he doesn't want a rational system. He wanted the system to fail, and they don't want law.
You didn't think things could get more outrageous than the political circus that's been Donald Trump's presidency, did you? Well, buckle up, because what's coming next might just top it all. George Conway, yes, Kellyanne Conway's husband, just went on live TV and did what many of us have been quietly hoping for. He completely tore into Donald Trump and didn't hold back. George Conway, a lawyer by trade, has built a reputation for his unfiltered, no-nonsense takes on Donald Trump. He doesn't sugarcoat anything, and he's definitely not concerned with being polite or diplomatic. When it comes to Trump, Conway delivers his critiques with the precision of someone who's been waiting years to drop a truth bomb on the orange-tinted chaos machine. So naturally, when he decided to wade into the political fray and start firing shots, the internet practically let out a collective, finally.
They can, they have to try sometimes because they're out there to remedy violations of the laws and the Constitution. But at the end of the day, the courts you can't have 600 plus federal judges trying to run the federal government through litigation when the president is just refusing to do his job, and not only refusing to do his job, basically saying F you to the duties that I have. The correct solution, and this is what made JV laugh, and you guys put it up on the internet, what JV laughing at me, the correct solution that the framers intended was impeachment and removal. When a president refused.
Let's be real. George didn't just throw out a few mild criticisms or cautiously worded opinions. Not even close. This was a full-blown takedown, a masterclass in calling someone out. Forget the usual talking heads and so-called political analysts. George Conway came in hot with a truth bomb so fiery, it might just make even the most diehard Trump loyalists do a double take.
1980 to 2018. Okay? I don't want to see a Republican Party led by a fascist, but he is a fascist. He cannot help but be a fascist. His personality disorders make him a fascist. He does not care about anyone else. He does not care.
Here's the thing. George Conway, flaws and all, and let's not pretend he's perfect, has consistently been one of the rare voices unafraid to call Trump out for exactly what he is. A petty, self-absorbed man-child with no concern for anyone or anything beyond his own oversized ego. And the best part? He doesn't rely on flashy speeches or dramatic language to get his message across. He just tells it like it is.
He can't help himself but emotionally react to things. But one of the things that he's a narcissistic sociopath. That's the thing everyone has to kind of get used to. It's the reason why you cannot normalize him. You cannot treat him like a normal human being because he's not.
If you're enjoying this, consider subscribing. Now, let's talk about one of Trump's biggest blunders, his total inability to act even remotely presidential. This is the same guy who thought firing off tweets at 3 a.m. during an international crisis was a solid move, and who could forget his infamous "I alone can fix it" declaration. It wasn't so much a confident statement as it was a sad, attention-seeking plea.
Rule of law, he does not care about justice, he does not care about right and wrong. He's a criminal, he's a convicted criminal, 34 counts. He stands charged with many other counts in which I really don't think he has.
George Conway, with his signature dry wit, wasted no time in highlighting just how ridiculous it is that Trump treats leading a nation like it's just another season of his old reality show. Newsflash, it's not. But good luck convincing Trump of that. He's too busy delivering over-the-top speeches about how he supposedly saved America, all while the country falls apart right behind him. Speaking of saving America, let's take a moment to appreciate Trump's so-called genius economic strategies. You know, the ones that were supposed to make America great again. But great for who, exactly? Because it definitely wasn't for the millions of everyday Americans who took the hit from his reckless tariff policies. Thanks to his trade war with countries like China and even allies like Canada, people are now stuck paying more for basic necessities. Of course, If you're wealthy enough, who cares what a gallon of milk or a roll of toilet paper costs, right? Then there's his whole "I love the military" shtick, which rings pretty hollow when you remember that he dodged the draft during the Vietnam War and went on to mock veterans who actually served. But hey, nothing says support the troops like publicly ridiculing POW. And who could forget his passion project, the Space Force? Because naturally, after wreaking havoc on Earth, the next logical step is to bring that chaos to outer space. It's like someone handed a toddler the nuclear codes and said, "Go wild with your wildest ideas."
What do you know about the OPM and OMB, and they're just like offering people, not buyouts. Buyouts is a misnomer. They're basically just like, we're going to pay.
I mean, they're kind of, it's a combination of Project 2025 and shit coming out of Elon Musk's ass.
Yeah.
Forgive me.
But let's circle back to the real headliner of this roast, George Conway. This wasn't your run-of-the-mill political shouting match where everyone talks over each other in a whirlwind of chaos. No, Conway delivered his blows with the finesse of a seasoned chef, adding just the right amount of spice, deliberate, measured, and with a sting that lingered. And honestly, it was that calm, collected approach that made it all the more brutal. He wasn't scrambling to trap Trump in contradictions. He didn't need to. He let the facts speak for themselves, and the quiet confidence behind his words hit harder than any loud rant ever could. Conway's criticisms weren't just a rundown of Trump's usual mishandled policies or the never-ending parade of scandals that cling to him like a shadow. No, George went deeper. He made a much more serious point. Trump, in his view, isn't merely ineffective, he's fundamentally unfit to lead. It's not just that Trump struggles with the responsibilities of the job, it's that he lacks the very capacity to grasp what true leadership requires. He doesn't know how to work with others, make difficult decisions, or engage in meaningful dialogue without turning it into a circus. Every word he utters, every move he makes, seems driven by his obsessive self-interest. Rather than acting like a real leader, Trump comes off as a man-child in a suit, playing pretend in the halls of power, completely out of his depth. What George Conway did so effectively was cut through all the noise, the drama, the spin, the political theater, and lay bare an uncomfortable truth. Trump isn't just incompetent, he's a genuine threat to the country. The fact that he continues to get away with it says more about the state of modern politics than it does about any skill or competence on his part.
Psychopath, and even at his mental best, at his most acute mental state, he's bad guy. He's basically represents all that is evil, as reflected in psychiatric. Far along there, and then I just started having this queasy feeling like I don't really want to work in this administration, because I was just watching the shit show that was going on with the Russia thing, with the firing of Comey, and the guy, it's just like the administration shut him.
Conway didn't just criticize Trump, he exposed him. And he did it in a way few have dared to. Calmly, clearly, and with precision. It wasn't loud or theatrical. It was raw honesty delivered in the softest tone. And that's exactly what made it hit so hard. He understands better than most that Trump's political persona isn't built on values, achievements, or any real understanding of leadership. It's built on a fragile tower of lies, self-glorification, and a wildly inflated ego. Trump has spent years convincing anyone who'll listen that he's the greatest president in history, even as reality contradicts him at every step. At this point, he's less a political force and more a caricature of one, more punchline than powerhouse. The problem for Trump is that the punchline is getting old, and the joke just isn't funny anymore. His entire political persona has always been a solo act with a script fueled by his own ego and performed for an audience that doesn't seem to care much for facts or thoughtful discussion. But once you strip away the bravado, the bluster, and the orange glow of his social media rants, what's left is a mess. An erratic trail of poor decisions, blunders, and outlandish claims that would be laughable if they weren't taken so seriously by his loyal base. These aren't just harmless exaggerations. They're distortions, being sold as truth.
I think everybody overthinks this guy. There's no strategy. There is no thought. And the brand is just him. He lives in this world where there's just him. Okay?
But it's not just him, George. it's a hell of a lot of people out there who've gotten sucked up into this thing and that are perpetuating
I agree with
that brand.
I'm talking about in his mind.
Okay.
None of us matter. Those people don't matter. They're not real people. He doesn't care what happens to them. If they show him adulation and they do what his bidding, that's good. If they don't do his bidding, he will destroy them. He will discard them. None of us, in his mind, okay, he's someone, as a man with no empathy, a man with no conscience. It's just him.
Trump has become the ultimate example of someone who will say or do anything to maintain power. He'll toss anyone aside, be it a rival, a former ally, or a random critic, if it means staying in the spotlight. No bridge is too important to burn if it gets in his way. And while he may still believe he's the main event, the reality is far less flattering. His political legacy isn't one of greatness. It's a cautionary tale of what happens when unchecked ego is handed the reins of leadership. Let's be honest, Trump has become the punchline to a bad joke, and it's one that's losing its humor with every passing day. His supporters might still laugh, but that's only because they're too blinded by loyalty or whatever else keeps them from seeing the truth to realize the jokes stopped being funny a long time ago.
The psychopath, because I thought he couldn't win. I just thought that, if all of us pitched in, things would turn out just right. Now the problem is, he's back.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced that even if the American people get their act together on him, and they're starting to realize that. I mean, there was this great article, I hate to say great article in Axios, but it was actually a great article.
His whole narrative is riddled with contradictions, and it's all building to a point where the world can no longer take him seriously. Yet he still clings to the illusion that he's some kind of great leader, completely unaware that the real joke is him. Loud, brash, and completely detached from reality, Trump is so obsessed with himself that he turned putting his name on every building into a public spectacle. When he wasn't busy branding everything he could, he was desperately trying to remind everyone how tough he was, as if that somehow covered up his glaring insecurities. Newsflash, Donald, the only thing tougher than your ego is the staggering number of lawsuits stacked against you. And of course, Conway couldn't resist calling out Trump's more ridiculous antics, like his constant Twitter tantrums. The ones where he'd lash out at anyone who dared to criticize him. Seriously, if Trump had spent half the time actually addressing real issues as he did posting rants on Twitter, maybe we wouldn't be in this mess right now. But we all know that Trump isn't interested in finding solutions. He's all about the spectacle. It's about grabbing attention, saying the most outrageous thing he can, and then watching the chaos unfold around him. And let's not forget his utter failure to take responsibility for anything. That would require too much maturity. Trump's go-to mantra is simple. When in doubt, blame everyone else. From the media to the Democrats to anyone who dares question him, he's always ready to deflect.
Okay? He is a bad man. And why all of you out there seem to want to excuse him and pretend that reality is something other than what it is and what you want it to be is the problem. And I don't say that you're garbage because of that. I think you need to look in the mirror someday and start thinking about, is this man the man you want your children or your grandchildren to emulate?
Conway made sure to call out this less than flattering trait, and while he didn't hold back on pointing out Trump's many blunders, he also hit on Trump's most concerning quality, his total lack of self-awareness. The man can't see beyond his own reflection in the mirror. Every decision he made, from surrounding himself with incompetent allies to mishandling international relations, was driven by a desperate need to inflate his own image. For Trump, everything is about maintaining the illusion of power, even if it means stoking chaos and division. Here's the kicker. Despite all the chaos and destruction he's caused, Trump still believes he's untouchable. He thinks the system is rigged against him, that the media has it out for him, and that he's the victim in all of this. The only problem with that narrative? It's completely, utterly, and undeniably false. The truth is, Trump has been his own worst enemy, sabotaging himself at every turn, and Conway made sure to remind him of that. It's almost poetic, really. The man who spent years mocking others for their mistakes is now trapped by the very ones he's made. But don't worry, George Conway is here to help you face the music. He's the voice of reason that cuts through the noise, showing us just how utterly absurd the Trump saga has been. Conway didn't need to yell or throw a tantrum. He didn't need to try and outdo anyone with dramatic theatrics. That's not his style. Instead, he just told the truth. And that, my friends, is the most brutal burn you can deliver in today's world of fake news, spin, and political theater. It wasn't about being louder or more obnoxious. It was about being clear, calm, and devastatingly direct with a few carefully chosen words. Because sometimes the hardest thing to do is sit back and let the facts speak for themselves. And that's exactly what Conway did. He didn't need to create a spectacle. He didn't have to set Twitter on fire with half-thought-out rants. He simply laid out the truth and let the absurdity of the situation do the talking. In a world where everyone is shouting and pushing their own version of reality, George just stood there, quietly exposing the emperor's lack of clothes.
Psychopathocracy. Psychopathocracy.
Yeah, rolls off the tongue. I can see how this could be. It's really
what
catch
it
fire.
is if you take all the characteristics that I was talking about last year, about psychopaths, malignant narcissists, narcissistic sociopaths, whatever phrase you want to use to describe them, because all of those phrases are like overlapping circles in a Venn diagram. You have a government that is psychopathic because it is being run by psychopaths for psychopathic ends. And psychopaths seek destruction. This is what they are.
And that's more than we've gotten from anyone else in years. So there you have it. George Conway didn't just roast Donald Trump. He stripped away the layers and revealed the truth that everyone else has been skirting around. Trump is a man completely out of his depth, whose every action is driven by ego and whose time in the spotlight has been nothing but a series of blunders. But in the end, it's George Conway who comes out on top, exposing Trump for the fraud he really is. And while Trump will likely respond with a tweet on his favorite social media platform or throw out another unfounded accusation at anyone who dares to challenge him, one thing's clear. The man who believed he was untouchable has finally met his match. And it's George Conway, of all people, who showed us exactly how to shut him down.